doing a community Q&A where you guys get to control the show. The Nintendo Powercast starts now. What is happening? As you guys can see, we got some Star Fox. The Star Fox Direct's just going to be our B-roll for tonight. And we're just going to be hanging out. And very community-focused night, just chatting with you guys. The Purple Gamer is here. What is going on? Welcome on in. How we doing? And yeah, you guys get to dictate the show. So Joey says Q&A. Okay, tips for finding Koroks. Use the mobile app. The mobile app is all you need. That should take care of all of your Koroks for you. Purple Gamer says it's been a very long time since I've been in one of your streams. Well, welcome back. Good to see you. Looks like Heron Wintour. Is that how you is that how you say it? Welcome on in. Been following since 2020, October 2024. Crazy. Well, good to see ya. Good to see you. So, yeah, you guys, if you got any topics you guys want to cover tonight, feel free to bring them up. I've got a couple things I've kind of been thinking about, like with the current state of like Switch 2, and like I feel like Nintendo wrote the book for how to do a system launch with Switch 1, but then kind of changed how they did it. But I think it's necessary because it's not as black and white. It's just going, oh, let's just launch. No, they're coming off of a successful console. So and a huge install base. So they're making money on two fronts right now. So from a I think from a consumer perspective, you want, if you're an early adopter of the Switch 2, you want those big games that we talked about in the show earlier today. But Steak is here. What's going on? A Purple Gamer, you're taking off. All right, good to see you. Self-claiming the OG follower titer. Let's go. I love it. Or self-claiming. So, early adopters, we want those big games. There's no question there. Like we want to be diving into the 3D Marios and the Smash and all that kind of stuff. And it seems like they're just kind of sprinkling titles and sprinkling titles that I'm not sure are going to have a super long tail. And so I'm curious on your guys' thoughts on this, because like I'm trying to think about it like from the business side of things, right? And on one side, I'm thinking to myself, okay, you take your top 10 games on the Switch 1. And I would assume you want to get those games out as quickly as possible so that any time in the lifespan of the Switch 2 that somebody picks up that console, those games are available. But then having those games launch far apart from each other, well, then that opens up, games that are console movers, right? And so I think there's a whole lot to finding the sweet spot when it comes to how many games to put out and how many of the big titles. Now, one question that I think we could probably ask is like a game like Kirby Air Riders and maybe even potentially Donkey Kong Bonanza. Like, would those have been better further down the road with a larger install base. And would it have been better for Nintendo to follow the 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 roadmap that they did with Switch 1 for Switch 2? I I'm a bit torn on it, and I don't, and at the same time, if they if they release if they release 2 to 3 of their like top 10, uh within the top 10 of Switch 1 onto Switch 2, like the sequels to those games, now third party is going to be just sitting in shadows of those games. And that's very much a thing that they're working on too. So I don't think everything's cut and dry. I think business-wise they're doing fantastic. I think as the consumer, we we want more, especially the hardcore. So um I see some great comments here I'm going to grab real quick. Okay, so first up, Joey says, "When do you think Mario Kart World DLC gets revealed? June Direct or holidays?" I think it's very possible that we see something at this upcoming Direct. I really do think that is a thing that we could see. And they need to get the hype behind it. They need to I think what they're trying to do is give the game plenty of what it seems like they're doing is they're trying to wait out the backlash from charging DLC for that game. But I don't see how we get around it. Like, I don't see how they get around it. They Because even charging for DLC, mainly characters, they will leave the tracks open to everybody. So you're mainly paying for characters at that point and the ability to do those Grand Prix, right? But again, what does that look like? What happens to the map? There's a lot of there's a lot of questions there. Do they expand the map like around the outside and they start adding islands and different little continents that kind of you know, connect to the island? Because then if you don't buy the DLC, you can't access it. But if you go online and you're racing, you would be able to race with your friends and not have to miss out on any of the new tracks that way. That's how they did 8, so I assume they'll do World the same way. But if they're going to add tracks in the middle of World, what are they going to do? Like gate those off so that you can't access them in your single player mode. So there's so many questions around that game on what and how they are going to how they're going to do it. So Steak says, I just saw the Steam Deck increase. Going to be crickets from those who said Steam Deck was a better value. Uh, it's significant price increase too, right? Like it seems like it's not cheap from what I was seeing. Like I was wondering if it was a new, like, is it a new Steam? Is it like a volume 2, or are they literally just raising the price on the OG handheld? I wasn't quite sure just based on how pricey it seemed. But I don't really follow the Steam Deck all that much. So 45% increase. Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. That's no joke right there. Um Midfi Senpai says, I think new IP needs to be in there. Yes. And then goes on to say, everyone loves a new Nintendo IP except ARMS. That was trash. There's some people, I mean, I know some people that love some ARMS. Like really love some ARMS. Heron asks, where's Splatoon 4? Yeah, we're getting that single player, with Splatoon Raiders. But again, how much does that move? How many copies does that move? And also, what does Splatoon 4 seems like it would definitely be a system seller. But the way Nintendo has done all this stuff, Mario Wonder being the 2D gets the Switch 2 edition. Okay, well, they're going to push that now. They're going to continue marketing that for a while. So when do we get a new 2D Mario? Animal Crossing gets the Switch 2 edition. and free DLC. So when do we get a new Animal Crossing? Splatoon, Raiders, again, was when do we see 4? And we're getting a plethora of remakes, you know, with Star Fox and potentially The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. The first 2 games that I see from the top 10 list, well, and it's not even from the top 10, but the first 2D Mario I potentially see coming as Mario Maker 3, which I think is gonna be amazing with the mouse. But then Smash is really the only one that we've seen nothing from. And it seems like Smash could potentially be low-hanging fruit. Like, I don't know how difficult it would be to, like, you know, to get the rollback netcode in there so that that the online is better. And then, you know, you add a handful of new characters with new stages. Of course, there's gonna be some balancing, maybe some new move sets to and costumes to, you know, Mario, Samus, Link could potentially have some new stuff. Zelda could have like a new look altogether, the Breath of the Wild look. Like, so there's some updates they could do there that wouldn't be like, yeah. I mean, obviously there's still a lot of balancing and stuff that has to go into that, but it seems like a bit of a low-hanging fruit. So Joey says, like, do you think some people burnt out on Mario Kart World and that maybe DLC could have supported it sooner? Mario Kart World has such a massive install base because of it being a pack-in that anytime they do something at this point, people are going to get hyped and jump into it. So I think I think they were smart in essentially packing that game in. I I don't I don't think they anticipated people not being as hyped about it as 8 Deluxe, but 8 Deluxe took a very long time to get to where it was, and it also took a complete, like, basically the remake of 8 being 8 Deluxe to really make it the game that, like, everybody everybody loved for so many years. So, Steak says they started dev on those on Switch 1. I don't think you'd want to be releasing those after, um, the built from the ground up games for Switch 2. Yeah, and I like that's kind of going back on some of our the earlier conversations, but yeah, th- they they were essentially Switch One games that they realized they weren't going to be able to. It didn't have the horsepower for it, right? So, and there's so many questions too on like, was Switch Two delayed? Were some of these games supposed to be Switch One games that they were going to do, but then they decided to pull the plug on them as well? Because 8 Deluxe seemed like a band-aid until World would come out, and then it did so well that they doubled the tracks, which I mean is incredible. So, you know, hopefully we see the same kind of love for World. Um, Going back and talking about Mario Kart World some more, Steak said islands were my thoughts too. Yeah, and I do wonder if it's just kind of, you know, they're going to kind of piece them around the outside or how that would end up uh working. Going back to the Steam Deck pricing, raising the price due to component prices and global economics. Yeah, of course. And it's not a new version; it's the same one. Oh wow. Okay. Joey says, I'm shocked Smash hasn't been touched or mentioned, like no new characters. There's one thing that I have said for a very long time is a healthy Nintendo is a weird Nintendo. And what I mean by that is that like they're not afraid to like, you know, play with some of their more obscure titles, um, to maybe release some more niche titles. And that's a good thing. Like we want to see that kind of stuff. I'm so stoked that we are seeing a Star Fox. Do I wish it was a brand new game? Yes, but it's been so long, and this looks like such a crazy upgrade that it's gonna feel like a new game. And we are seeing like I still want to see something like Punch Out, you know, and maybe there's maybe there's something like you've got like Chibi Robo and some of these games that are like, kind of just off of the radar altogether. Even I mean, games that surprised me that we saw like a few iterations of, like WarioWare, right? That's weird Nintendo. That is like weird Nintendo right there. And but I do think it's good. I love that kind of stuff. I hope that there is some way that we can see Punch Out again. So Nadine A is here. What's going on? Joey says DK's new design would be nice in Smash. He could have a new Bonanza moveset. Exactly that. TMH, how are you? Good to see you. Nadine A says, I think it was internally delayed, talking about the Switch 2. Nate says, I think I prefer hungry Nintendo, not fat, happy Nintendo. I mean, it's a catch-22, right? Hungry Nintendo, they're making sure that they're not skipping a beat. Everything is like on point. Speaking of like the first 2 years of Switch 1, like that was incredible. They set a very high bar. And then this time around, it's like it's the dance between supporting the older system, supporting the newer system and the early adopters, and really finding that sweet spot. And and they still have games coming to both, like Tomodachi Life, right? Just came out not that long ago. They are absolutely knocking it out of the park compared to what we've seen from other companies. I know that Sony and Xbox both struggled because they were making so much money with the large install base of their older console that it made no sense to be an early adopter when it came to the Series X or the PS5. I even remember buying the Xbox One, and it was like it was a couple months before, like, if I remember correctly, like Shadow of Mordor or whatever, I think was like one of the first like Xbox One exclusive games, because the 360 just had, such a big install base, same as the PS4. I see Jason is here. What's going on? Steak said probably got Sakurai to do more Smash by enticing him to with working on Air Riders. That could be the case, no doubt. Midpie Senpai said would love to see a Star Fox RPG like the Xeno games. Let the team go super deep with the lore and even create new lore. Yeah, that would be great. We talked about on the news this afternoon, like No Man's Sky, like, and we kind of got to see that with Starlink, where you could play as Fox on the planet's surface and then just go into space. Like that's the kind of, like, we're seeing the footage of Star Fox right now. They've done some very cool things as far as like trying to make it more cinematic and like make the graphics just like somewhat impressive. I know there's like some weird uncanny valley stuff, but like I appreciate what they're going for, but also push that gameplay to the limit. Like let's go from surface to space, just like in Starlink or in No Man's Sky, because that's not something we're used to doing. Star Fox is very on rails, so how do they get away from that? How do they evolve the series? And that's really something that I think needs to happen with these. Like the arcadey style Star Fox is fun and everything, but like, what are some risks that we can take? What can we do to push the series forward? With these new assets, what can be done to like show us what a Star Fox game can be in 2026? We know what it could be in 98, right? And we make it look pretty in 2026, but now show us what it could be in 2026. And I would love that. So, um, let's see. I want to Nate says this is the underdog thing for me. You have to work harder to try harder as the underdog. Yeah, no question. No question. And I mean, part of me wonders if they're not being very intentional with the things that they're doing, trying to balance both systems without leaving the Switch One completely behind. While because the flip side of it all is that, especially in this economy, not everybody can upgrade to the Switch 2. So for some people, they're excited that they're still able to play uh, some of the games that Nintendo's releasing on their older system. But and I do still hear complaints about people like, why isn't Pocopia on Switch One, and why isn't Air Riders on Switch One? Like, and so it's not a fun place to be, and it's never been a fun place for them to be. Like, going from the NES to the Super Nintendo was a scenario where, like, you know, Sega had a device that allowed you to play the 8-bit games on the Genesis. And it's one of those items that was like, just the fact that it was there gave them a better look in the eye of the consumer, and it's going into a new console has never been it's never been an easy thing, especially it seems like when you're going from a successful console and then trying to have another successful console. And Midfi Senpai has pointed this out many times, where it's like every other successful Nintendo console kind of like does a little bit worse. Like, look at the like the NES to even the Super Nintendo. Like, it took a bit of a dip. And so obviously Switch 2 selling super fast. Like, there's a very large install base for, we're coming up on the 1 year. Like, and that's fantastic. It's breaking records and all that. But, and maybe this play of just drip feeding the big titles is really going to be what continues to keep their foot on the gas throughout the lifespan of this thing. And I mean, there is a very real potential that we will see the life of Switch 2 go much further than Switch One. And I would say that there's a very real possibility this time around that we could see a Switch 2 Pro, just to extend the overall life of Switch 2. That may be something that happens, just so that they could squeeze an extra couple years out of everything Switch 2 by adding the Pro version. So let's see. Joey says Nintendo just needs to ask Nate what game he needs and just feed him that game already. He's been starving a while. No question. Joey says, I am eating good. I'm over here eating good. All right. Steak said, Hungry Nintendo gets you more Bad Girls eShop games. Yo, those things are wild. I'm having so much fun with that. Like, just looking up the eShop slop. Let's see. Oh, Nate threw up in his mouth from the Star Fox RPG. Here we go. Not a fan. Nate just needs his straight up action. Cryptic is here. What's going on, my friend? Good to see you. Six says, don't forget one of my favorites from Xbox One, Rise Son of Rome, underrated, and believe it was a launch game. You are correct on that one. It was, yes. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. There was something about, you know what it was? I think the Rise of maybe because it was maybe a third party. I'm pretty sure that, and I don't know if Rise was considered third party. I think it was a first party game, if I remember correct. So I just remember there being something that stood out about Shadow of Mordor or whichever Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor. I can't remember which one it was. That it was like, yo, this is not going to be on both, because you had games like Destiny that were on 360 and Xbox One, and So there were quite a few big titles that were cross gen. So um Nate said, kidding my mid pie as long as it's not turn based. There we go. The club is here. What's going on? 2 lives in one day. You're eating good. Let's go. Um uh yeah, Rise still looks pretty dang good. Oh, I love that. I love that. If I stream Tomodachi Life, will you stream it on Twitch? I've got to, so I have to sit down. It's been kind of a crazy busy week for me. Um, I need to sit down and figure out the plan for Tomodachi Life, and maybe I'll do that live. We'll just get on stream and start talking about it. So yeah, it'll be when I do it. I'll do it on Twitch and YouTube. So um okay. Cryptic says, I think sometimes Nintendo holds too tightly to their IP when they branch out. We have Cadence of Hyrule, Oracle Games, etc. Take a crack at their IP. They tend to be well received. And it's not only that, they also are so hands on. Starlink sold crazy because Star Fox was tied to it. And, technically, Metroid Dread, which was the best-selling Metroid game, was developed by a third party, essentially. And so there, and I mean, and then even look at Ubisoft with the Mario plus Rabbids games. Like there was some stellar success there. So I 100% agree with you that they should branch out. I would love to see take one of these indie devs that's done like a Punch Out clone and let them roll with the IP and see what happens. Right? Nintendo obviously still very hands-on. They make sure that it meets all the quality that they want it to have. But then that's a game that like could almost be treated like an indie that could come out on both systems at a budget price, $25, $35, whatever, $30. And now you're giving us Punch Out. You're starting to fill that space that's like not the triple A space, but like that more like indie kind of double A, if that's a thing. I don't know. But we're still getting first party Nintendo content. We're not having to pay a premium for it. It can still be on Switch 1 and just have a higher frame rate on Switch 2. And I think everybody wins at that point. So I would love to see some more things like that. So Joey says, like, part of me wonders, what are they doing with NSO? Like GameCube's been out a year and they're barely giving them anything. Yeah, they are going a little bit slow with that. And I think for some people, it may not be a huge amount of people, but I think there are some people that like, if that GameCube library was significant, it would be a system seller. That would be something that they would want to get into and be able to play a lot of their library. I think Double Dash is going to be one of those games that like people will be like, yo, I can finally play Double Dash online with people. Sign me up. I'm picking up the Switch 2 because I want to be able to play Double Dash again. And I think there's a handful of other titles as well that could potentially do that. So, and not to mention, like, we know they can get third party stuff. So what are some of those top selling games that were on the GameCube, and when do we see those? And I mean, one of my favorites of all time, Time Splitters 2 or Time Splitters 3 would both be fantastic additions to NSO. So hopefully sooner than later, we start to see a bit more of a drip feed. I feel like what we are seeing from them quite often is Nintendo Music. Nintendo Music is getting updated on the regular. Star Fox got added tonight. Picto Nico is also out according to the Nintendo Today app. If you guys want to check that out on your phones. So, Cryptic says Metroid proved they can make a Metroid game and had to release it to retro. Oh, Metroid proved they can't make a Metroid game and that they had to release it to retro. Look what Square did with Mario RPG. Yeah, so you do have that there. Metroid is that one scenario where that didn't go well, but and then it took a long time to really get Metroid Prime 4. But my question is, you've had retro there all along. Why weren't we giving it to them to begin with? What was happening there? Retro's essentially been like this support slash Donkey Kong dev. What for Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze and Country Returns, right? So what why didn't they have that to begin with, and just not have to deal with that? That's one of those series that's like they're still here. They're like the rare of the 64. Retro should be doing those games, right? So but that is an instance where the handing the IP over didn't go so well. Nate said, I mean, there's always to bring down there's always to bring that MSRP down, trade-ins and stuff. Here we go. Here we go. Wow. Cryptic said, what if Yacht Club made a Yoshi platformer, or Square did an Earthbound? Yeah, exactly. And what if Square did an HD 2D Zelda game? You mentioned earlier in your other comment about like Oracle's, right? And the Capcom Zelda games. I would love to see what the teams at Square could do with an HD 2D Zelda. It could be incredible. Absolutely incredible. And then Nate goes on to say, don't read the last part. Yeah, exactly. Midfi Senpai says, give Star Fox to Ace Combat devs. Boom, profit. Now you're talking. Now you're talking for sure. Those guys definitely know what's up. No question there. And Nate says, now that I like. So there we go. Nate approves also. Joey Pitt said SNES took a dip. I thought the SNES had amazing games on it. Cough, cough. The best platforming trilogy ever made. Cough, cough. So it did, but the NES had no competition. And Sega came in and took 50% of or over 50% of the market share from Nintendo. So the Super Nintendo suffered. Now, I do think that played a part in why the software was so good, and that competition was healthy and good. Don't get me wrong, but it did take a big bite out of the market share, and that's why that's part of the reason the SNES didn't sell as well. It's not that the system was like worse or anything like that, but they had to deal with Sega. So this is a call out for Midfi Senpai from Nady Nay. It says, now can we get Star Fox rubber duckies for Jeep dashboards? Let's see. Wes Brown says, Josh, what up, homie? Have you ever played Earthbound? Or we just played Earthbound as our NSO game of the week a couple weeks ago, and I loved what I played. I thought it was fantastic. Which reminds me, guys, we're gonna go one more week on Yoshi's the Super Mario World 2. Was it Yoshi's Island, right? We're gonna go one more week on that, so we'll talk about that one next Wednesday. Steak said Switch 2 Pro OLED. Yeah, that'll be it for sure. Steak said GameCube lineup was teased, kind of set some expectations, then they randomly do different games too and leave people who want those other titles wondering what the heck. Not me, but seen people, and there's no question about that either. Like we did see games. Where are they? And is this something that takes a lot of time to be able to get those games onto Switch 2? Are these teams just like, or are there parts of teams that's literally all they're doing is just trying to get these games ready for NSO? Now, I imagine they're having to work on them in different regions, because right, they do launch them in at least 3 different regions. So there's some time there, but like, how long does that take? Do they intentionally hold this kind of stuff back? Is that helping or hurting the brand at this point? Like, I would I would I would just love to see some more of their bigger titles hitting NSO. Now, who knows? Maybe there's a possibility that they're like waiting for a price increase and then they're going to drop more titles to try to soften that blow. I hope that's not the case, but it very well could be. So, um, let's see. Joey says Donkey Kong is one of my favorites, but it hasn't been handled the best, excluding Bonanza since Rare. Uh, so Joey, with the HD Donkey Kong Country HD Returns and Tropical Freeze, you weren't a fan because from my understanding, both of those games, like I loved both of those games, and Tropical Freeze is what I think most of the people that like listen to this show want when it comes from a Nintendo game. It has way more challenge than what some of us are used to, and or that we want. And it was in some cases it was a complaint that it was too difficult. But I think I think the majority of the people that played it did enjoy that difficulty. So Steak said, doesn't the person who created Earthbound say no whenever Nintendo wanted to do more? Could be hearsay rumor, but that's what I thought I heard. That's interesting. I don't know. I don't know enough about it, or I haven't dug in deep enough to find out. But I yeah, it is a bummer because it just seems like such a cool like cast of characters and just such a fun IP that like it could almost it almost falls in line with like Stranger Things and ET, and I feel like they could do some like really cool like synthwave remixes, kind of like we just saw in the Mandalorian and Grogu. Um, that just kind of give it that like cool 80s vibe, but like kind of lean into that a little bit more. And just to see those characters modernized, I think it would be super, super fun. So let's see. Are you expecting anything for next week's Summer Game Fest? When do you think when do you think they announce their direct? Summer Game Fest has traditionally not been, it's mostly been third party stuff. So I always just keep my expectations super low on that. With E3 completely being gone, maybe Nintendo starts to do something, but I mean, I know that's Jeff's show, right? And Nintendo seems to be kind of they've kind of pulled back over the past few years on even the Game Awards. And when you have they Nintendo wants to lean heavily into the Nintendo Today app plus plus their own directs. And I mean, look at what we've seen. We're watching the Star Fox Direct right now, right? Like they're not doing things how they've traditionally done them. And they told us things were going to change. I just don't know how much everybody loves that. Like we get these little mini directs, but like not these full on mainline directs. And I I mean, only they know what like is it better for their marketing when they focus on, you know, just one game. I mean, I would say there's some benefits to like showcasing one game for 15 minutes that typically like I mean, how often do we grade the directs on pacing and all that kind of stuff? And like we get these like just these little snippets of what's coming. I don't know that it's necessarily a bad thing, but it's also uh good in for some of these games to get these deeper dives and to be able to go, you know, go a little bit deeper into them and really kind of inform the consumer on what they're spending their money on. So I don't know if they do much for Summer Game Fest. I would love to see them do more, but you know, I'm of the mind that we're going to see a direct in June, like we you know should potentially expect, and it'll be business as usual. We're going to see what the holiday has to hold. You know, is Smash going to get announced? Is you know, Nate the Hate has talked about, of course, the the Ocarina of Time remake, as well as a Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Switch 2 edition, right? So there's a few things that are in the leak department that that could potentially come come to fruition, but we still need we need something new. like I've said it a few times, we need something new. So Wes Brown says, would love a Switch 2 remake of Earthbound. It would be great. It would be great. Jason says, what's today's topic? So it's just a community Q&A. You guys are kind of dictating the show, like whatever questions, comments you guys have. That's kind of what we're doing. It just gives me, I want to do these more often where I can just focus on the chat and the questions that you guys have. And we just kind of riff off this stuff. So Joey says Return and Freeze were great. They just seem to miss that rare touch. Interesting. That's interesting. And I mean, I loved the first Donkey Kong Country, but I didn't really get too much into the ones after that. So I would have to dig in more and then go play Tropical Freeze and Returns just to see like how they compare. Jason says DK Returns and Tropical are honestly your top 10 platformers. Love that. Steak says I've given up on some big titles, IPs coming to NSO. I think they hold those back in case they want to do remakes or release them individually in the eShop. Yeah. Yeah, but and you know, I wonder right now if they worry about Double Dash taking away from the player base of World potentially. And that's why they're not doing it. But I would say if they have those concerns, then they need to do something to make sure that nobody wants to leave World for a long period of time. That they take those necessary steps to fine tune that game to get the player base locked in and not wanting to jump to something else. That's what I would love to see them do. Let's see. Cryptic says you don't think stuff like Elden Ring or Dustbloods gets a trailer or release date at Summer Games. That's very possible. Something like that is definitely possible. I'm just more talking about first party Nintendo. I think there are third party games that get announced, but it doesn't seem like there's many third party Switch or Switch 2 exclusive games coming out of Summer Games Fest. It's usually like, oh, the Switch logo is included at the end, right? And I'm not saying that they never have that happen. It's just it doesn't ever seem to be something that's really on my radar all that much. So, and I hope that changes. I want nothing but the best for those shows. Oh my goodness. I don't even know what that I don't have anything open to be able to see what that was. Let me see here. Oh, there we go. Joey with the super chat. He said DK64 on NSO June 4th. Here we go. I love it. That's great. I'm one of the few people that thinks that Donkey Kong 64 was great. I was a broke newlywed at the time of that game, and that was all I could play, all I could afford, and I had a lot of fun with it. So yeah, I thought it was great. Taking a look here. Let's see. Steak says Josh going back on the Nintendo Byte podcast soon. Prime usually hits me with the invite whenever they're trying to get their quarterly schedule, and so I was supposed to be on it. The beginning of April, I believe, or like end of March, beginning of April, and my schedule just didn't work out. So that's why I haven't been on there in a while. But yeah, he should be. I usually get a text from him saying like, "Yo, when are you coming back on?" So should be sooner than later. So Joey says Nintendo just tweeted, "Holy cow." Let's see. Wait, Joey. Wait. Wait a minute. That wasn't your super chat wasn't just wasn't wishing. you literally you were letting us know that it's actually happening. It's actually happening. So yeah, I just got the email from Nintendo, and Donkey Kong 64 is getting added um on June 3rd. So there you go. Get to you get to you get to jump back in. I know Joey is more than excited right now. I thought you were just saying you want it on there on June 4th, and I'm like, well, that's a very specific date. But no, no, no. It was it was uh it's happening. So yeah, they just tweeted out, they just put out a trailer. Like, yeah, my phone is going crazy with just Nintendo notifications right now. So DK64, June June 3rd. That's great. I love that. Um Joey says I only played a little bit as a kid at your cousin's house, never played it to complete. So you bet I'll be putting Tears of the Kingdom down for this. I love it. Steak said I would like to see Nintendo allow the Switch 2 logo to be shown on third-party reveals, not just revealing them on Nintendo Directs whenever those come back. Very true. Yes. Yes. Uh-oh, Jason says Picto Nico's prices are outrageous. Ah, that's unfortunate. I haven't downloaded it yet. So um Cryptic says, so what does podcast look like for year 2 of Switch 2? You still sticking with news, or can you tease anything future plan? Maybe some crawler on some news. So there I'm what I'm I don't know really have anything planned at the moment. Like as far as what's gonna happen there. Some of it is just timing with the time zones and everything. So I do want to at very least periodically try to get those guys on to do some stuff. We've talked about it a few times. So um I wouldn't rule out seeing them at some point in the future. So uh and we still chat almost daily in Discord. So a lot of it's just kind of time zones at this point, because I've been getting up so early that it's difficult for me to stay up. um like, when we start at 10:30 Eastern, it just makes it difficult for me to try to stay on my sleep schedule is all. So um yeah, we'll just have to see what the future holds, and maybe trying to swing a few of a few shows with those guys for sure. So um Joey says, what's next for Diddy Kong on Mario Kart World or Diddy Kong Racing on NSO? Which is first? Oof. Let's do this. I'll do you one better. Let's do it at the same time. When they add Diddy Kong, maybe throw in a few of Diddy Kong Racing's tracks into World, since we can go from water to uh technically land and sky. I mean, it may be possible that we see some of those tracks make a return. It could be pretty cool. So um Jason says I've never played DK64, but I've always wanted to. Well, there you go. You're going to get the opportunity, which is super super cool. Jason also says, where's Johnny Bo? He's doing well. He's 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 excited for some things that got leaked today. I don't know if you guys saw some of the leaks with um like a remake of Rayman, uh or Rayman. And so he's been chatting about that. He's excited for that. He's also been loving Yoshi. So um and I know Crawler's been playing. He picked up 007, which is he got it on PS5. It's not out on Switch yet, unfortunately, as we know oh so well. So, but I think that's going to do it for tonight's episode, you guys. You guys have been awesome. If you're listening on or you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. That helps the show a ton. Also, if you're listening after the fact on Apple or Spotify, hit that follow. hit that subscribe button and leave reviews. That really, really does help. And Jason says, real quick, top three me's. Okay, top three me's. Let me think about this one for a second. Top three me's. Back in the day, some of my favorite me's, I loved seeing like Garfield, SpongeBob, and the me that has the little skateboarder on the face. I think if you guys know, you know. So that's gonna do it for tonight. You guys have been awesome, and as always, play it loud.